Dear guests, colleagues and friends, welcome to the digital kick-off meeting of the ITI Academy. When we started a working group-based draft 5 years ago, it was overdue to finally set up a platform for knowledge on international collaboration, where the International Theatre Institute, the Performing Arts Institute of the UNESCO, has a certain expertise since more than 70 years. Thought as an academy for emerging artists and curators during our festival Theater der Welt, Theater of the World, we soon found that we have more to share, even since Theater der Welt is our biggest and most complex project. But there is no festival without a multitude of expertise in many fields. It needs personal and professional contacts, mutual trust, sensitivity, cultural competence, as well as business skills. Thanks to a permanent and reliable support of our national and local public funders, the Federal Commissioner for the Arts and Media, the Culture Foundation of the Federal States, and the City of Berlin, we were able to accumulate with several international projects an extensive knowledge basis among our members, collaborators, and our staff. This treasure is what we would like to share and to circulate. The Academy should be a platform to exchange new ideas for transcultural collaboration, for festival making, for artistic mobility, for eye-level cooperation and arm's-length funding, networking, integration, disintegration, for error and success. My colleague Malin came to the ITI 2 years ago to prepare our first ITI Academy for Theater der Welt in Düsseldorf, in cooperation with the Festival Academy of the European Festivals Association. She became the mastermind networker of the Academy project beyond a single festival-related event, and of course also for today's and tomorrow's program. We were hoping so much to have a personal gathering at the historic Hospital Bethanien in Berlin-Kreuzberg, discussing, thinking, planning, dreaming. So much for your energy and your fantasy. I hand over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for this very kind words. And yes, now we are sitting here all separated now in our apartments and living rooms at home, and at least our body. We are at least separated through our bodies. But I'm very happy that we're having the possibility to meet here, crossing national borders and time zones, and coming together from many different backgrounds, especially later in Gather Town and tomorrow. And the coronavirus has taught us one lesson: the change is unstoppable and became even more crucial. Facing global challenges such as the climate crisis, injustice, and inequalities that continue to be reproduced, we need courageous visions for this transformation, as well as actions and conversations based on empathy and solidarity. And I hope that with the ITI Academy kickoff and later on with the ITI Academy, we can provide a space and a platform to reflect and imagine a different world, and to open up a space for fruitful exchange and encounter. So before we start now, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Nora Amin for her advices while planning this weekend. And Nora has curated as well the ITI's annual conference on hybridity and equality. And with this conference, Nora had already raised together with colleagues from all over the world, like with Sasapin. She raised already very crucial and important questions and issues related to transnational collaborations in the performing arts, which we would like to deepen in the ITI Academy. Now, the kickoff, but also later when we start the scholarship program next year. You will have the opportunity to meet her tomorrow at the workshop she will give about perspectives of decolonization of festival making. And now I would like to introduce you to Dr. Nicola Scherer, who's holding the keynote today. I'm very delighted about that. Nicola is an artist, curator, and culture manager. She teaches and conducts research into festival studies at the University of Hildesheim. Her dissertation focused on international theater festivals and their strategies with regard to culture policy. Besides that, she performs as well for many years with a Space Ensemble Collective in Berlin, in Braunschweig, in Vienna and San Francisco, amongst other places. Nicola, I welcome you, and the floor is yours now.
Yes, thank you so much, Malin and Thomas, for the introduction and also the words about the times we are seem to be in right now. When I was planning the keynote, it was important to me to bring some positivity and a vision. And I'm very glad that this is just a starting point for us today. I will start the presentation now, and we'll just quickly share that with you. So who cares about this dystopian times? I want to start with a quote from a philosopher, and I will show you a quick structure for the keynote. So I will start with the quote from Rosi Braidotti, and then present to you a thesis out of my research of the last couple of years, so 5 to 6 years, researching the International Performing Art Festival landscape. Then I will give you some examples out of the scene and present to you performing art festivals as actor networks. And then in the end, well, I have no key, but a note. And so I will start with the quote from Rosi Braidotti to just give a quick idea of who she is. She is a philosopher and a representative of post-structural and feminist theory. And she implemented this idea of the post-human era, so that we are already within a post-human era in our time. So we had a long history of putting humans in the center of global decision-making processes. And she developed a theory claiming that we have to have a brighter vision on more entities than just humans. And what she also proposes is new ways of combining critique with creativity. So how can we solve the issues that we are facing right now and feeling so closely right now? And putting the active back into the activism. So that's also something she's very clear about. And then moving towards a vision of post-human humanity for the global era. So this is just a quick introduction of her. And if we face this dystopian times with so many challenges, it's almost always important to have some kind of positive idea or dream. And I will introduce you to the dream she was shaping within one of her books. So it was and still is the dream of actual constituting communities of learning that look like the society they both reflect, serve, and help to construct. It is the dream of producing socially relevant knowledge that is attuned to the basic principles of social justice, the respect for human decency and diversity, the rejection of false universalisms, the affirmation of the positivity of difference, the principle of academic freedom, you might add artistic freedom, anti-racism, openness to others, and conviviality. So, you might ask, what has this dream to do with the Performing Art Festival? So this is based on my research, and the performing art festivals are indeed very relevant actor within the international performing art landscape. So this is a thesis I started out with, and also found this in all the expert interviews in the research. And festivals see themselves as cultural political actors who curate internationally and mediate locally or regionally, and they form specific profiles within their curatorial work through which they affect and contribute to new narratives. And that's obviously something which is important to transform a broader landscape, to have new narratives and also unlearning about concepts we might thought which were set in stone. And just to give an example, they make a contribution to expanding the repertoire of stories that are visible in the festival's host countries, and also, of course, to experts visiting. And associated with this are, for example, questions of the representation of various aesthetics, dramaturgies, actors, and performing art practices. To make this a little bit more lively, I will, it's still not ready, so there's more, sorry. So therefore, theatre festivals are effective on a local, national, and international level and contribute to the diversity of the performing art landscape. In the curation of the festival, socio-political references are consciously programmed by the curators. So now the thesis is done, I promise. So here it goes to the examples. In the center of the examples is the question through which actions can international performing art festivals can be described as cultural political actors. So what are they actually doing? And one perspective in which they are cultural political actors is the international production or co-production as a practice. So this is just a picture from one theatre collective called Influx Control, In Case of a Fire Run for the Elevator, a silent musical about food and taste. So in this point, it's important to mention that within the international performing art festival scenery, we have a disbalanced power relation between the global north and the global south. So we have a lot of festivals within Central Europe, and so therefore also not a lot of power to decide which projects are within this global scene and are produced in this global scene, because most of the money is coming from this cultural policy frame, which we have in the global north. So this is actually something we will hear a lot more about later from Annika, who is a practitioner in this field, and I guess also from Sasapin. So I'm very glad that we have both of them here tonight. Another perspective is the usage of cultural political references in the curation and the mediation. So this is another example from the Steirischer Herbst from 2016. The curator of the festival used the slogan, "We can do it," which was a slogan from the former German Chancellor, "Wir schaffen das." And it was the beginning of the so-called refugee crisis, and that was a refugee welcome culture as this started out. And this reference from a political slogan they used for the opening speech and were crystal clear about their positioning, and so that they, for example, saw themselves as the opposition within also the district with the festival we're at. So you can see here this installation of the festival center, which with the title Arrival Zone, and they invited all the citizens of the district and the artists together in this festival center. So also the positioning of the festival and the geographical position is very important when it comes to culture curation. And because this festival is close to the Hungarian border, and they just built it up kilometers wide border between Austria and Hungary again. And so that's just I could talk a lot more about this example, but we maybe can come back to this later. So another perspective is the integration of local scenes and actors. This is an artwork from Marco Canale at the Theater von 2019. He invited citizens of Hanover to share their biographical important spots in the city and their biographical stories. And so this is die Geschwindigkeit des Lichts, the speed of light. And there are a lot of other projects which integrate local actors in their artwork. And here is an example from International Summer Festival on Kampnagel in Hamburg, Germany. They used this this phrase, there is no planet B, so they were attached to the discourse about ecological issues and issues of sustainability. And this is just one aspect. So there are a lot of more discourses like feminism. We just heard about the decolonization or post-colonization discourse. And there are a lot of more. And also the invitation of theorists into a festival frame, such as Rosi Braidotti, Hélène Cixous, or Nikita Dhawan, are examples how theory became more and more linked to international festival scenes in the last couple of years. And another perspective is the creation of new narratives, aesthetics, and dramaturgies. So this is Box in a Suitcase. This is a play from Curators, and this is an example how other aesthetics and narratives and dramaturgies can be implemented through international performing art festivals. It's always also part of the decision-making processes for curators to think about how this artwork could work in a certain frame within another local scenery of a city in the host city, and also a chance to show other works. And another perspective is representation. So that was a concept of the Theater von 2019. It's called Untold Stories Disappear. They basically went the path and wanted to find out stories which otherwise would just vanish from the planet or never be told. I'm very certain that there are a lot of stories never being told within the pandemic. So this is another example how the cultural political actor festival is capable of also transforming this international scene. So we have this 6 different perspectives. This is not all they are doing, so it's just to give some examples. It's a cultural co-production, the cultural political references in the curatorial work, the integration of local scenes, the participation in discourse, the creation of new narratives, dramaturgies, and aesthetics, and the representation. So this is the Performing Art Festival as an actor network. So the actor network theory is based on using empiric material to create a grounded theory. So this is a methodology about performing art festivals, and you can see here in the core of the festival is almost always the art. So the first wish or the first aim is to show artworks, and so this is the core. And if you just grab one of the examples like being linked to discourse, you can see that there are a lot of different discourses a festival can be linked to. And in this being linked to and affecting and also learning from discourse, new narratives and cultural policy strategies can be developed through the international work. So yeah, that's for now. I cannot see any time, so I'm sorry for that, but I guess it's still okay. I have no key what this means, but a note in the end. So if you think back to the dream of Rosi Braidotti, so to propose new ways of combining critique with creativity and putting the active back into the activism, or the vision for the post-human humanity. There are several layers what performing art festivals and their actors could do, and also the cultural policy frames have to change and transform their structure to actually support the transformation of a global scene. For example, you can think about the geographical positioning of the festival itself. So every festival has to take place in the global north of the world, yes or no? The curatorial concept or the slogan of an edition is important to give a sign or an idea what is an important issue to discuss. And there are also socio-political relevant issues which come into the festivals mostly automatically through the artists themselves, because they have to, or they do reflect within their artwork the frames in which they have to produce their art, and also the question of artistic freedom. And so you can think about inclusion of local actors and scenes. There's maybe just one note to the note. If you want to include local actors, you should always think about the aspect of sustainability. So if you're really going into the sustainable and long-term dialogue within with the local actors, or if you just kind of use them for just one edition, which also came up within the research, what a certain way of listening into what's going on in the world. So a certain awareness of the practitioners of the festival scene. And then the sustainable interchange with international artists. So this is very important to the co-production and collaboration, so that you, especially if you go out of the perspective of yes, the institution with the money to go to another country and co-produce or collaborate with maybe small collectives with a really different infrastructure. So to be responsible and try to develop ways of working together on an eye level, that's a big challenge. Then there is the ongoing question of the own role and the form of the festival itself, the formats which you create for a festival, then the blind spots which the institution or also the people around it have. And you can think about the progress you're making as an institution, as a learning institution year by year, and also consider your mission statement once in a while. So the openness for failure might be another very important point to learn and unlearn, especially in this work, in this field of work where so much diversity is going on, and so fast-moving processes globally anyways. So, and there another note is to leave space for in-betweens throughout the festival. So almost always everybody complains about not having enough time to create something on their own. So just to have really time and space to come together, to exchange ideas, and not just have this showcase moment where you just showcase your artwork and then you have to go again. So this is not starting an international dialogue. And the understanding of the festival as actors' networks to reflect the complex practice and responsibilities outside the show time. So that was pretty much referring to what I was saying before that. And the last one, the cultural leadership in a post-human and post-heroic times. So if you go back to this theory of we already are out of this Anthropocene, so this area of time where the humans are in the center of every global political decision-making process, that we also have to think about collective leadership, which can be found within the performing arts scene, especially on the outlines. So maybe not on the big players, but more on the small collectives, the small festivals, especially the ones who are implemented by young professionals, and think about agile management methods and discrimination critical work. So I think I'm through with this keynote for now. So thank you, and I will hope to see everyone again.
Hey, thank you very much, Nicola, for this very inspiring and important keynote, and especially all these important points you presented us in the very end for working internationally and organizing festivals in a post-human area. And I'm very, very delighted to have now Annika and Sasapin straight away with us before, of course, and anytime people can ask questions via the YouTube chat. Annika and Sasapin bringing up two very different perspectives, and they're both working in different contexts, and it's good to also leave a bit the Northern or the Central European perspective behind us with them. So first I would like to introduce you to Sasapin. She's a performer and director and international producer based in Bangkok. And she's a core member of B-Flow Theatre as well, which we will get to know better tomorrow, because we are going to watch a performance together of the B-Flow Theatre tomorrow evening. It's Thailand's most highly awarded theatre company, which is creating highly visual and socially very engaged performances and multimedia productions. And Sasapin is as well the artistic director of the Bangkok International Performing Arts Meeting in BIPAM, called BIPAM. She will present it later. And Annika, Rachor is a curator, culture researcher, and artist based in Groningen, Hildesheim, and in Kampala. In her bachelor thesis at the University of Hildesheim, she researched on the topic of reframing central and decentral organizational structures in the work of intercultural teams. And this year, Annika founded, together with other culture practitioners from Uganda, Rwanda, and Germany, the Pengo International Culture and Artistic Network. Maybe, Sasapin, I would like to ask you first. Nicola, she put forward the thesis that international performing art festivals are politically relevant actors for the international theatre landscape. What do you think about this thesis, having in mind the culture scene in Bangkok and the political situation in Bangkok, or the situation where you're working in? Yes.
So I would just respond briefly to what you just posted, Malin. And first of all, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with the ITI again for the second time. I think doing theaters and performing arts in a place like Bangkok or the country Thailand is never going to be not political, because we are immersed in political situations and, if I may, crisis constantly the whole time, and it's only thickening and intensifying as at the time that we're speaking now. So I will dive into my presentation, which is kind of built around this background, and just to kind of give you an overview of what it's like in Thailand, and how a platform like BIPAM rises out of this kind of context, and also a little bit about B-Floor. So I will share my screen. All right, so once again, I'm Artistic Director of BIPAM, or Bangkok International Performing Arts Meeting, and a core member of B-Floor Theatre, whose work flew full. As Malin said, you'll get to see tomorrow evening together, and I'll also be there. So I'll be sharing with you what we do at BIPAM, mostly against the backdrop of the contemporary performing arts scene in Thailand. And then I'll also dive into what B-Floor is doing a little bit later at the end. So BIPAM is now in its 5th year of existence, and we are an international platform of performing arts with a focus on Southeast Asia. And our main activity is BIPAM Meeting, where we program showcase performances from Thailand, from Southeast Asia, and sometimes beyond as well. We also host panel discussions and also networking activities and spaces. So we do operate very similarly to a festival. And in fact, we are in close association and cooperations with other festival makers in Thailand as well. This is a video that I'd like to show you. I'm gonna speed it up a bit. This is a wrap-up video of our 2018 edition. It's a bit long, so I'll speed it up. It was themed Root Roots, where we try to have a conversation, a dialogue between the contemporary arts and the traditional performing arts. And it was also the first year that I worked for BIPAM as the artistic director. So BIPAM's focus on Southeast Asia, what does that mean? It means that we prioritize in our platform Southeast Asian voices, presence, narratives, and representation. But we also welcome non-Southeast Asia from around the world who are interested in interacting with the diverse narratives of this region and hearing about us directly from us instead of through other secondary voices. And this is going to relate to Nicola's points about having a platform in our own geographical area, outside the global north, for example. So that is actually one of a very important original mission of BIPAM is to pinpoint Thailand and Southeast Asia on the global map of contemporary performing arts, and trying to assert ourselves into the global perception of the performing arts, as opposed to waiting to be discovered in this sense. I have a next video that I'd also like to show. This is when we had to move to online. This is a trailer from our recent 2021 edition, just happened in September this year, which was fully online under the theme ownership. So the limitations of this time that we're all experiencing actually has led us to the opportunity to engage more deeply with our local artists, mostly in Thailand. And this resulted in many, many beautiful and poignant original collaboration works and conversations by Thai and also by Southeast Asian artists. All right. Now let's step back from BIPAM a little bit to the backdrop. I want to show you the state of performing arts in Thailand. Often the fact that BIPAM seems active and well motivated, it is misleading that we are amply supported and well recognized. And to that, I would say no, hardly ever. It's not really ever like that. There's practically no system for the arts in Thailand. Artists have been and are still self-producing almost 100% of the time. And even the BIPAM team, myself, and other similar collectives are working on a voluntary basis. And a voluntary basis is really just a polite version of saying we don't have a salary. We don't get paid, pretty much. BIPAM, for example, we are granted on our budget on a project-based merit. It's very unsustainable. And we don't always know whether we will have enough money or resources to create our next edition or the next activity. So sustaining an existence is a constant challenge for all of us in Thailand, whether you're an artist, a group, a venue, a festival, or a platform. And the idea of something like a producer, a curator, a presenter, a manager, a festival director, all this is still a very new concept, and it's only starting to gain some recognition just within the past decade or so. We do have something that is called the Ministry of Culture, and we even have the Office of Contemporary Art and Culture, but they're pretty much detached from the scene, mostly minding their own businesses, currently satisfying the military regime's pretty much tyrannical and obsolete vision for the country. But also, to be fair, our performing arts community is also relatively young, having started back in the 60s with the rise of democracy and students' movement at that time. So within this kind of context for performing arts, how do we then engage ourselves with the world? How do we internationalize? How did we even start? This is kind of the point that Malin gave me a little bit before when we were preparing. So I just want to tackle this. Of course, a network, and I think we can think of network as a noun or as a verb. And network in this sense is key to internationalization. And when BIPAM was just starting out, we knew we had to be as widely networked as possible. But not having much resource or capital in our hands to start with, how did we do it? So we either accepted any opportunity that came along to start or created our own. When I started, I accepted almost every invitation to participate in everything: festivals, platforms, conferences, training programs, whatever. And many of those, as you might have guessed already, came through cultural diplomatic schemes of powerful countries, the global north, of course, like Germany, France, or Japan. And was I aware of this kind of political play, power play, in all of this? Of course, all along. But we didn't have the luxury or could really afford to say no to anything when we wanted to start. And in addition to that, I've also invested personally in traveling to many different places as I could to participate in festivals and platforms. But of course, there'll come a day when the work gets rolling and you can't really be in conversation with anyone anymore. You can't always travel either, because you could only travel so often on your own expense. And restrictions regarding traveling that was already heavy for a country like Thailand gets heavier now in the time of the pandemic. We had like visa regulations and all this. I'm not sure if you can imagine having to apply for a visa and risk getting rejected every single time you want to go abroad, but that's been our reality. So maintaining an international network in this kind of situation for me is to invest and then let go. Invest time in building relationships that are precious for you, whether because it's a important work connection, it's a like-minded colleague that really helps you in your spirit, or it's a professional role model. Whatever you decide, you invest and you let go, because you don't always know what will lead to what in the future. But you let go, and then you also trust that you will reconnect with these precious people when the time is right. And now from international, I want to scope down to the regional a little bit, to Southeast Asia, more into the aspect of being a cultural political actor, as Nicola has pointed out. Having worked for BIPAM in these past years, I realized that Southeast Asia is quite special to us, because BIPAM has become not just a network of colleagues, but according to many BIPAM participants themselves, we are a home it feels like home, they say, to our regional fellows. So people in the network are really our friends in its literal sense. And so with this, the question of solidarity comes quite naturally, because you would naturally act for your friends. And also because of the awareness that it is a collective struggle. It is not about wishing that someone could be in as good a position as you are right now, but it is about that their win is our win and their loss is also our loss. Myanmar is a good case to talk about here. I think the latest coup d'etat in Myanmar is as much a loss for democracy in Myanmar as it is for Thailand and also the region of Southeast Asia. As we are in solidarity with each other against oppression and injustice, the dictatorial leaders in our countries in the region are also joining hands in practice and in spirit. And so when that happened in Myanmar, there were many immediate responses and aid groups that spontaneously formed in Thailand to raise funds and empower our friends in Myanmar in different ways, including BIPAM, B-Floor Theatre, and also the Thai Theatre Foundation, amongst many other groups. Finally, we're gonna come back around to Thailand. Currently, BIPAM is among those with the most concrete presence as a performing arts organization with continuous work locally and internationally in Thailand. So we often act as a spokesperson for the Thai and the Southeast Asian performing arts community. And with this potential, comes also our realization that it's also in our power to take on some advocacy work for the community as well. So here are some pictures from the workshop and discussions we held earlier this year, where we brought together Thai performing arts stakeholders, as various of them as we could, for a face-to-face and open discussion on how to collaborate sustainably in the future. So in short, in this sense, BIPAM acts as a mediator for performing arts to encounter and interact with other sectors. So beyond this particular workshop, we also bring performing arts to meet with the Creative Economy Agency, for example, technology makers and archiving agency. And now to the smallest unit that I belong to, B-Floor Theatre. I could say, like Malin said already in the introduction, we are a very social, political theater company using physical theater and movement-based storytelling. So I would say that the company has been among the creative powerhouses for democratic spirit in Thailand. Since the youth's movement for democracy that started in mid-2020, B-Floor has been the major force to drive, for example, this group called Free Arts. It's an artist activist group that has been employing arts and creative media to drive forward the people's movement. B-Floor members are often seen on the street with the demonstrators, sometimes giving spontaneous performances with them. And our members have also incorporated current street movements in our performances in different ways. And you will see an example of this in the performance Flupol tomorrow. So I'm going to stop my presentation here, and I look forward to any comments, discussions about anything. Back to Malin, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sasapin. Yes, it's really important to have this inside view of your work, and to see that. I feel that the vision of Rosi Braidotti we got presented by Nicola became already reality, putting the active back into activism. And this is not a question if you are working in your field or in your contexts, I guess. So I would like to include Annika, of course, now, who also prepared a small presentation, and she is really also with these different places where she's living in, like being in based in Uganda and in Germany and the Netherlands, it's really interesting how you work in this decentral way. So Annika, please, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your work?
Yeah, thanks so much again for the invitation. I'm really grateful to be here, and I think it's a really great chance, and it also shows, the concept of the academy to give people a platform to exchange. And about myself, I studied at the University of Hildesheim, and this is also the place where I started to engage in the international art sector. So I started with a festival I initiated in 2019. And today I want to present to you our association, which was founded on this International Festival of the Arts. And currently I'm living in the Netherlands because I started my master program, Cultural Leadership here. So the network is expanding somehow to other places right now. And I will start my presentation to tell you a bit more about Pengo. Yes, so Pengo is an international cultural and artistic network. And I want to start by introducing to you how our team looks like. So this is our current team right now. We are all young cultural practitioners from Uganda, Rwanda, and Germany. I just start to introduce the team members. There's Job Anumet Jobway, who's a visual artist from Uganda, Kampala. There's Maria Nesemann from Hildesheim. She's a cultural practitioner and mediator. Alice Hipko, also from Hildesheim, a student at the University of Hildesheim. Michael Dölle, also a student and mediator in Hildesheim. We have Muntu 621, a visual artist from Kigali, Rwanda, and Patience Wabur, also from Kigali, Rwanda. The team is still not in its final structure. So as you can see, we still want to kind of include more people in the team of Uganda and also Rwanda. But the current situation of Corona was really difficult for us. So we're right now in the building up process. And you might wonder what Pengo is meaning. So I will kindly give the platform somehow also to some of our team members by introducing you to a short video of ours where they try to explain what Pengo means to them.
The term Pengo, for me, it's a Kiswahili word that means gap. But beyond that, it's a nice word. It's a nice word in the art direction. Could be used to express a lot, could be used to change a lot, could be used to reflect a lot, like showing the gaps in the real life, in the everyday life. Yeah, that's what Pengo means to me. A chance to feel up, a chance to express, a chance to expose. Pengo, a chance to build.
Pengo means for me building a connection or maintaining a connection, a human connection, doing arts, organizing artistic events, and not just as a business, but as a network of people which try to get to know each other.
This is also something that this Pengo work makes so important for me. Pengo means gap in Swahili, and we chose this name because we talked a lot about walls or boundaries in our heads, also around countries or continents, and we knew that we would not tear down walls, but that we can find gaps in between by improvising and by being open and by sharing our time and our perspectives.
So for me, the term pengo, okay, it means it means a gap, but for me it means more like the space that connects all of us, you know, like there's always one thing that connects all of us, and that gap is for me it means like a gap that we need to focus on and build to create a bridge that connects, you know, a global relation or a global family. So I would say like thank you once again, and I'm really looking forward for what we are gonna create and what we are gonna build together. And I wanna say in my mother tongue, a saying that says it's a statement that says thank you so much, and I'm really grateful that we meet again and reconnect. And I say Yalama yangonoi airiamun bobo inachana kere. Yeah, peace. You're great.
Yeah, so as you could see, we are kind of all sitting in this boat together as a team. And if there's kind of a sentence that maybe could describe how we see our work, it's maybe this one. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Why do I choose this sentence? Pengo is aiming towards sustainable working structures. We founded International Network in 2020, and we are aiming to have one really big international network with artists from Uganda, Rwanda, and Germany, but we're also aiming for local sustainable structures. That's also how we kind of decided to have associations in each country. So we started by founding the German association, Pengo Germany, this year. And we are going to found also associations in Kampala and in Kigali. By explaining the structures, I'm going to refer to our 5 years agenda. So the important thing about our work is our organizational structures. So first of all, we have the international network that has central structures of organization. That means that we are working all of us together, having all of us the same voice in decisions, and we're trying to find a way in the next 5 years to create this vision together. This also implies for the artistic vision. We want to kind of create bigger artistic projects with an international context. On the other hand, we also have this decentral local structures. This means that we have 3 local associations in all 3 countries, and they can act independently from one another. This also means that, for example, our German team is not involved in project activities in Uganda and Rwanda. Through this, we achieve to really work on a local level and be really connected to this local level. In the next years, in this year and the next year, we're going to focus on smaller art projects and international discourse formats, but we're also focusing really on building the sustainable structures. The other point in our 5 years agenda is expanding the network. So we're currently searching for new collaboration partners to expand our network in the next years. And a really big topic that is always really present for us is the topic of transparency. So we not only want to just create artistic visions, but we also want to make the working structures we're working in and the problems we're facing as a really small association, we want to make them transparent. And this year we started 2 really different projects to make these working structures transparent. The first project was called Can You See Us Now? It was an installation project, an exhibition project happening in the summer this year in Hildesheim. And in this project, we just presented the works of our team members. We wanted to present how they're working. We wanted to present which kind of visions we're having by transforming these visions into artistic projects. And then on the other hand, we also presented the videos you saw. It's a bit longer, it's like an hour long. And in this video, we try to explain how we dealt with the situation in the last 2 years because of Corona. And with this video project, we wanted to make transparent how different the situation was for us. The next project this year, these are some impressions of Can You See Us Now? Just to give you a short impression also. And the next project that is going to happen this year, actually next week, is a digital panel discussion project called Can You Hear Us Now? You can still register for it if you're interested in it. And there are 2 panel discussions going to happen. So the first one will be Queer Voices, a digital discussion panel with LGBTQ+ artists from different continents. And on the 12th of December, we have the panel discussion, the ownership of space, where we're really talking about the creation of spaces, but also about the topic of representation. So who is talking about whom and who is creating those spaces in between? Yeah, so as I said, we're always looking forward to expanding our network, and yeah, you can contact us on our website, Instagram, email account. And yeah, let's create these gaps together. And thanks so much again for this chance. I'm going to stop it now.
Thank you, Annika. Yeah, it's very inspiring to see how you're working, and that you really working in the way that we want, how we think future maybe, or how we should organize international collaborations in the future. And still, it's really difficult for me to imagine how this work is really, how you're dealing with communication and working together at the same time, keep each other like completely spaces. How does it look like in the in reality, in the everyday working progress? Yeah, so maybe this is one question I have right now, but like you said, you already build it up in an association in Germany, and you would like to have as well an association in Rwanda and Uganda. So how does the funding or the money comes from? How are they the groups from Rwanda and Uganda starting to look for associations in their countries, or how do you organize this?
Yeah, I think the topic of organization is a really important topic and a really difficult topic for us, especially in the last 2 years. As I said earlier, it's the Corona situation really made it even more difficult than it already is, because our team members in Uganda and Rwanda struggled a lot with the measurements going on in the countries. And in general, we're organizing ourselves like this, that we have like each month we're trying to have like at least 2 meetings with the international team, and we see ourselves as a safety net for each other also. So I think something we learned in the last 2 years was that we have the artistic visions, but as I said, like the building up of the sustainable working structures where we all feel safe is right now the most important thing. And I think that's something that always brings us back together. So even if we have struggles, even if, you know, there are some months where the team members in Uganda and Rwanda, they can't talk to us anymore because they don't have a place to stay, they can't, you know, present their artworks anymore, etc. We still find ways to come together because we have this personal connection. And I think that's something that I can say that really helped us through all of this, that we are really engaged in the project and we're really all in this together and see each other as a safety net. The other really big problem is funding, and that's really something that we're struggling with on the international level and also on the national level, and especially when it comes to the local level, because the funding we're getting right now is mainly the one from Hildesheim and the region. And this funding is only funding projects that are based in Hildesheim. So every time we want to have activities in Kigali and Kampala, we're not getting money for it. And on the other hand, it's really difficult to get funding in Kampala and Kigali because there are not so many funding structures there. And if you want to fund all 3 countries, you need a really big project. And I say project, that's the other problem we're facing. Most of this funding is project funding, so it's not structural funding. And that's what we right now need. We need structural funding to build up sustainable structures. And that's something I'm really concerned about right now, because the international art sector is always talking about sustainable structures and how can we do that. But on the other hand, it's so difficult to really start these processes, and it needs time. It needs at least 2 years to really build it up. And that's
also during the pandemic, or now just the start to do art, or the requirements to work are sometimes not there. And how can you think of even working internationally if you just have not the possibilities to start even working? So what do you think as well about the what Nicola described, that when we work or we do a festival, an international festival, at the same time we mediate locally, and we have this contradiction, or not a contradiction, but these 2 directions of curate internationally and mediate locally. At the same time, the individual artist maybe has not even the requirements to start working. So what do you think about this?
Actually, yeah, I just had to respond to Annika because I was nodding my head off when she was speaking. I'm like, yes, I know exactly what you're saying. But to respond to what you just asked, Malin, I felt this, discrepancy between thinking international and thinking local less now than last year. I think actually 2020 was when I really felt torn, because as BIPAM, I'm engaged in so many international conversations for the COVID times, about the COVID times, trying to find solutions, thinking about the future. But COVID meant something quite different on the local scene on ground. So I'm like, many times I'm like, what am I doing talking about all these like international questions that sometimes feel like it has nothing to do, or it's not going to directly benefit the artists that are like, struggling, because yes, we have COVID, and it's like COVID is a new problem for places where there's not really many problems before, but in Thailand it's like another big problem that adds on top to another thing. And actually COVID is not just about the arts not being able to work, but it becomes one of the really big problems, because it's a big excuse for the dictatorship, for the dictatorial government to use this and turn around all the powers. They can use this to issue new laws and make all these restrictions that prevent people from doing anything, saying anything, or direct money elsewhere where they want it, and in the name of the pandemic, for example. So I was really torn much more in 2020. Right now that things are easing up a little bit, we can start thinking about a little bit forward. I feel that sometimes it's like we want to think forward, but we can't really, not so much, because what is happening now, if this is not solved, we're not going to get anywhere. And by this I mean having actual democracy, where people can have a conversation with the government, or people who are supposed to represent them. The situation at the moment is, you can think about all the good things you wish to happen in the arts, but it can happen in all these like short-sighted ways. But to dream of a structure, it has to be about policy. It has to be about the politics. It has to be about the state and the system as a whole. And this we're talking about 10, 20, 30, maybe 50 years from now. So one of the ways that BIPAM and some other collectives like us, like we have the Thai Theatre Foundation, we have other festivals that are working in this way as us, that because we are a collective and we artists are also making their work, making their critiques, but as we want to look for the community, look forward as a collective. we think about how we can actually talk something to the government, because right now, I mean, you know, the street protests, everybody wants them out, but they're not out yet. And bloodshed or not, we don't know. But what can we do now that they're not out? What kind of conversation can we have with them? And it's quite sad, but what we're doing is trying to talk in the language that they understand. And at this very moment, the government is willing to listen to the economic impact language. I'm sure you're all very, you know, familiar with this, but it's something that frustrates me, because I don't believe that this is the value of the arts. But this is not the only language that we can open any conversation with any governmental agencies to divert their eyes on us, and also, more importantly, divert their resources on us. So it feels like the people on the streets are making direct negotiations and resistance with the government, which we are all in for, we support, but also in our, like, I don't know if we can say a more diplomatic way or more sly way, we're also trying to talk in whatever language they are willing to listen now, the government, and pull in whatever resources we can at the moment. And these two have to go together, you know, so the more direct way and this like detour way, I think it's necessary that we don't go exclusively for either one or the other, but all this has to happen together, and together they will speed up the process rather than one or the other, because the straight way, you know, the resistance, the attack, of course, is like violence on the street, violence increases, people stop back down, and it's like this at the moment. But this way is much slower, much more off the point, but it's also kind of like, you know, get things going bit by bit. So this is kind of how we're doing it at the moment, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds really very difficult. And I just was wondering again, if you're talking about BIPOM, is anyone who would like to be part of the network, or this network of friends has access to BIPOM, or is there any process how to accept artists group to be part of the network, or can anyone join you who would like to join you?
I think pretty much anyone can join us. I just had this conversation with a colleague yesterday. I think that when you are asked, like, who are your artists, this is one of the very bothering questions. Like, I don't think we have our artists, and it's impossible to have our artists. So that means that if I ever say our artists, it means, you know, the artists in the community. And of course, we are aware that we don't always know everyone. And I'm not sure if it's clearly communicated, but we're also opening our arms as well. It's not like, oh, you have to do such and such to join BIPAM, but BIPAM is a platform. And if you want to do something with us, get in touch. You can just get in touch and participate. And that's kind of how it goes, really. There's not really anything formal. And I think we don't want to reach that point where BIPAM becomes itself another institution with its own like bureaucratic procedures. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, good. I understand. Nicola, listening to Annika and Sasapin, and thinking about international festivals as cultural policy makers, what do you think? What kind of role can the festivals, maybe in Germany, since we are the ITI Germany right now based here, what kind of role can they take over to maybe shift the power a bit, or are they even the actors who should shift power or not at all, or how can they give marginal like voices who are unheard and stories who are not a platform, and how can we deal with this unequal world in curatorial practice?
Yeah, so there are several ways. So I think, I tried to give some idea with the notes. So what would be concrete ways to to make a shift or a transformation within this global scale. And I think with this positioning of the International Theatre Institute or any other performing art festival within the global north, with literally every single decision you make, you can transform and change the system. So with every contract you are doing, with every format you are creating for a festival, with every decision where the festival is going to be held. So what is the host city? Does it have to be a city at all, or can it be decentral? And so with really every decision you can change something. And for me, I interpreted this tonight actually as a beginning. So to starting a discourse, I think it's very much about listening, really listening to what is going on in other places, and also fighting the same fight. So I really love this idea of the gap being something that connects us all. So if the gap is something we have to take care of together, then this could be the starting point. And I also think that also like a powerful institution such as the ITI will not be able to solve every issue for sure, but it's a good moment to look closely to what you can do, what is the scale on what you are able to really act, and and then in the end to network, come together, and being active on the political scale, being active on a social political level. And there are so many layers, so we could talk about this for hours. So I think the most important part is not raising questions anymore. For me, this is really something we did in the last couple of years, also in the academic practice. And we have to come to this part where we change this raising questions to come to concrete requests. So really say, this is my request. I want to change the cultural policy funding structure for small initiatives. So we need that. So who do we have to talk to? Who do we have to address? And it's also about being flexible and possibly also a bit utopic and realistic at the same time. What are strategies to aim this? So what Sasapin was talking about, different strategies, how you can address an issue. And I guess there's a lot of expertise, but it's more about bringing that together and get rid of something like ego and get rid of some power as well. So especially for the global north, it's also about releasing power and giving power to other actors within the fields.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a very important, I think, as well, for building up this ITI Academy program to go deeper into these questions. I would like to ask Annika and Sasapin now about the title of this panel, or the keynote narratives of contemporary international performing art festivals and collaborations. So what kind of narratives you would suggest? What it would be a good narrative for, if you just do one collaboration, or just you presented us one, by the way, Annika, what is the main narrative for you if you would describe the work with Pengo?
I think the main narrative is changing the narrative. So changing the main narrative that was always presented to us, and is still presented in so many cases. And also changing a narrative of who can act in the international cultural arts sector. Because I think it's also something, when you talk about international collaborations and you talk about responsibilities, who is having the spaces, who is in charge of coordinating international collaborations. It's mainly institutions in the global north, but it's also mainly big institutions. It's if you look at the whole framework. So it shows like this whole narrative that has to kind of change. And also when it comes to narrative, who is telling the story? And that's also something we are always trying to re-question right now, even in the projects this year, giving the platform to people telling stories that are not heard. And I think like building up a narrative that gives more space to untold stories and changing the narrative that is there into a totally new narrative that gives also young people and small associations the chance to be part of this narrative. I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Sasapin, about
narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's similar to what Annika said too. It's like our stories, because I think BIPAM was really born out of this wish to be seen and be heard as we are, right where we are. One of the origins of the idea of BIPAM was that like, you know, people from Southeast Asia were invited to speak about ourselves, but in different places. And we always meet our own folks, like, you know, people from Malaysia, Singapore, and such in other places. And we're like, why are we not talking about our stories with our friends in our homes? And so this idea came along. And we realized that it's important that something takes place in a certain place. Each place has a different implication, and to be able to speak about your own story in your own home has a totally different meaning and implications and impact than when you do that in another place that's not really your context. So that's kind of where BIPAM is at the moment, and where I think we're very careful in selecting who gets to be seen, be heard for what purposes. And it's always quite tricky, because in the process of selecting or curating, you're including somebody, you're immediately excluding somebody else. And so for each and every decision, we try to be really careful. And I'm personally always like on the lookout for who else is there that I don't know, what else that I don't know. It's like a constant self-education that I bear on myself, that this is needed and necessary for us to work, to continue to make sure that we can keep working in a way that is most fair or as close to justice as possible. And that starts with knowing that you don't know, and go after what other things that you still don't know and haven't heard of, and don't stop. Yeah, it's pretty intense to bear all this, but yeah, it's kind of the work that I feel like I have to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very important. A good point as well. Yeah. Before I raise another question, I see there is something going on in the chat. It's a little weird that we don't see the audience and we have no real interaction with them. But there is no question. So I also don't know if they're still all on, but otherwise I would go deeper into another subject, or would like to talk with all of you about the question of sustainability, which is we have these three dimensions as well of sustainability: economical, ecological, economical, and social sustainability. Annika, you were already mentioning that you try to work in a sustainable way with Pengo. Before, I would just like to ask Nicola, what kind of concepts, approaches you see right now in the festival studies, or if you look at festivals, how we can work, curate, create in a sustainable way, which is a big question if you think of the three dimensions, but maybe you can give us an answer.
Yeah, so so on the international scale, I think the SDGs of the UN are a very important starting point, just to think of the diverse opportunities to think about sustainability. And for example, the Theaterform has a new director of the festival, and she was really focusing on the ecological sustainability of the festival. And there are different layers how you could work on that. For example, to questioning if a festival, so the whole global traveling point. So this is a big issue in the industry. So is this traveling around the world something we have to have a look on? So especially if we just have this showcase situation that there is not really any interaction between the international artists during the time where they are, like you could say, scheduled within a festival time of a couple of weeks mostly. And that would be one point, or also to think about all the practical things. So for example, what could you do digitally, or do you have to print out things? So the very basic ecological sustainability things. How do people travel? So do they have to come by plane? Are there other possibilities? Can we rethink what meetings we can hold in different ways? And but maybe more importantly, at least to me at the moment, is the sustainability of relationships within this landscape, because I think this is what we need to really transform something, to have the sustainable connection to each other. And from this grows power to do something. You cannot, we won't get anywhere on our own. This is something I really strongly believe. So I think this is more important right now. And obviously there are resources. So this whole scenery is not without resources, especially when we talk about the global north. So to rethink, where do we put our resources in, and who is, what is the relation? So who is getting what of these resources? And so we have also overproduction and not very clever ways to deal with all the technical equipment for festivals or something like that. So there are first ideas for example, the Festival Friends. So 5 festivals combined their whole technical operations and interchange technical equipment. So there are a lot of things we could do. But for me, actually, this the relationship part is the most important right now.
Yeah. So it's really a long to-do list you're emphasizing, and which we can also take with us to this ITI Academy program. Sasapin, which kind of aspects of this sustainability notion, or this whole concept is interesting you, or do you have in mind while working?
I think the question around sustainability that is most interesting for me at this point is that the performing arts people are among the first people who think very seriously about it and really want to find solutions to this. But even if we all in the community stop traveling, I think we're still not the biggest culprit, and I think we all know who the real culprits are. And sometimes it's very it's almost like it's kind of cute that we are thinking about this very seriously. But I mean, in the end, I think this question directs back to the corporates, to the people who are actually burning up resources. And yes, we can be more sustainable, more economical in the ways that we do things, like, you know, the different things that Nicola has listed out. But I mean, and we should go for that, but are we going to be the community that you know, stops and put an end to the carbon footprint, you know, issues and all this? I don't think so. I mean, it's like, it's very nice, and I think it's very dignified that we are taking this in our own hands. But it's not about just us, and we can't. I think we have to be quite realistic in that we're not going to be the people who will solve this, but we can take part in it. Yes. Yeah. So we can do the small things that we can, and I think there's a colleague in Thailand who says, in Thailand we kind of have to be sustainable, and we have to be because we're poor, and where you are poor, you don't have a choice because you can't afford to be superfluous anyway. So everything is already thought out. It's not that I would encourage everyone to be poor, but I think it's about thinking about the necessary and the unnecessary, much like what Nicola has said. Like, do you really need this? Can this be done in a way that is a little bit more effective in terms of cost and use also? So just kind of putting this awareness, this bit of awareness into the little things that you do. But also, I think knowing realistically that doing A and B is going to give different results, and you choose what you really want. Another practice that I think works well is to get everyone engaged, and you put it's like asking for everybody's mission together, like throwing what everybody wants on the table and see a middle way for all of this. Because I think already, if it's a one person or two people's ideas, then you want to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 10, and then the other person will come and say we don't need number 8. The other person will say we don't need number 2, for example. And in the end, I think when you really take in everyone's perspective who's on your team as much as you can really find this way that is effective, again, in terms of practicality, and also in terms of relationship, and also ecological wise also, because you really want to find different ways that's not gonna be too much for anyone and everyone can agree on. And also you can see that your mission, whatever it is spelled through with this kind of collective brainstorming and solution finding. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Annika, what about you? Are you having all the time the 3 dimensions of sustainability in mind, while or are they playing a role in your Pango work?
Yeah, I think the main focus when it comes to sustainability is, as Nicola stated, when it comes to relationships and when it comes to networks. So I think that's like the first point that comes to my mind when it comes to sustainability. Not only networks between people or between like our team members, but also when it comes to really building deep connections in projects and in collaborations and in festivals. And for me, it's also, as Sasapin was stating, like a balance process. It's like balancing between different point of views on this topic. And also, I thought about, like, for me, it's also like a learning process from each other in a way. It's like, for example, when you go to a festival and a festival is never documenting the last years, and they're always starting from scratch and they're always doing the same mistakes over and over again because they don't document the old ones, then they will never go forward. And that's also for me sustainability, because learning from old mistakes and stepping really forward on a ground to work on. And I think this ground to work on is something we try to build right now in Pango, that we have a sustainable ground, that we're not always starting each year from the scratch. And we're not, for me, that's also something about what's kind of going wrong right now, because I have the feeling it's all about innovation. It's all about doing new things. And if you don't do that, you're not getting the funding, you're not getting the money, you're not getting the frameworks. And I think that's the main problem, because you can't be innovative all the time if you don't have the groundwork to work on. But if there's no framework to build this ground to work on, I think that's the real problem. And when it comes to the ecological perspective, I think we are trying also in Pango to right now try to find new forms of connecting with each other. I mean, we have to. It's also because we are living in different continents, but it's also something we are trying right now. Like, how can we be connected even though we are far apart? And it does not always mean to take an airplane. It also means to really find new ways of connecting places with each other. So for example, we wanted to do a street art event this year. It didn't work out because of Corona, but we wanted to have like 3 different street art events happening at the same time in all the 3 locations, and then just use Instagram to connect all of those locations and try to give the audience the feeling of being connected. And even with next week with the discussion format we're planning, we also wanted to have live audience in all 3 locations and connect them with each other. That's also not possible now. But I think these are also options. It's like this feeling of like to being connected can also, be created through other means than just being there in person. So I think these are kind of the different levels I see right now in our work.
Okay, yes. We, of course, also will think a lot about these sustainability questions in tomorrow, but also in the ITI Academy. And there are still no questions, I think. Okay, maybe that would be also another possibility to soon change the format or the room, and we could meet the people, at least for digital real, in Gathertown, and have another form of a conversation. Before we leave this, I first of all, before thanking you, I would like to ask each of you a question, or would like to get an advice or an idea from the 3 of you, because this is the kickoff of the ITI Academy, and afterwards we will, we will look at this weekend, what kind of questions have been raised and what kind of topics we have been discussed, and we will start to build up the curriculum only next year, and also to start the whole program. And the idea is right now to have in the end maybe up to 20 fellows who are part of this like a 1-year exchange and mentoring program, who are meeting for several weekends, and in the end during Theater der Welt 2023. And I would like to get from each of you an advice for a tool or format or a subject what we should have in this IT Academy represented. Do you have an idea? I haven't asked you this before, but Nicola, maybe you can start.
Yeah, gladly. Well, there's a bunch of ideas, but for me, the first thing that comes into my mind, if you number this at 20, so we have 20 young professionals worldwide who will have the opportunity to be part of the academy, really to think about how to be able to have a diverse group and what they would need so that they would be able to really participate within this program, because as we heard from the practice examples, it will mean different things to different people, and really being able to be there and investing the time, that will be something different depending on where you are from. So that would be for me the most important part. And also if we have to like narrow it down to 20 people, to think about how a brighter community can be in touch, and also creating a dialogue with especially the smaller ensembles, collectives, initiatives worldwide. So what could be formats to include more people into this idea of transforming a global performing arts scene landscape together. So.
Yes, okay. Good. I will still collecting other advices. Who likes to continue?
I don't think I really have an advice, but I think I would be interested in inserting this question. I mean, it's kind of also similar to what Nicola has said, but I like this question, what else? What what else can give you ideas about many things, not just ideas that are different, but who else, where else haven't you thought of, listened to, or even seen, or even known? So when they think you already have an idea, maybe before you decide on it, you can ask yourself, what else, what can be its a variation or diversification of the idea that you think you already set upon. And another thing is also for thinking for yourself. I think it's very easy for festival makers and people who are very active in the performing arts scene to think about, always making something happen. There's a lot of ideologies out there that we would like to fulfill and make happen, but also how to make that sustainable for yourself, because it's very easy that you do something for a couple of years and then you run out of energy, you run out of mental capacity, and you don't want to do it anymore. What about yourself? How to make yourself sustainable in what you do as well? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a good point. Yeah. What about you, Annika?
I think when it comes to formats like academy programs, I always kind of question also how sustainable these connections are in the future. So I think that's maybe something I would have in mind, like how can a network really be established through an academy program like this, and how can kind of the participant really engage in creating this network, like depending on the needs they're having. And also maybe not only a network to connect in general, but maybe also network, that could provide like a learning process, so that like all of the participants could still learn from each other during the process. And if they see maybe during the academy, they have different things in mind, they have the same problems, they have the same things they're facing, that they can kind of count on each other, because that's something that we would need as young cultural practitioners. That's something that I saw all these years now, that not too many people you can just go to and talk to, and that's something like, free communication. And this is something an academy program, I think, could do also when it comes to sustainable structures, to make the academy a sustainable structure in itself somehow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's very, very good. I'm very happy to have you with me right now in this talk, and to collect all these very, very important and inspiring ideas, and to set up an academy program next year together with all of you and all the people from we are going to meet maybe now and tomorrow, and who like to think of this program and how we can use it. Now we soon leaving this room. I just would like to give Sasapin a shot, the moment to tell us about Flufu, because we are going to meet her tomorrow again, and we can see together now a performance of the B-Floor Theater, and it's a 2020 edition. You already performed this performance, I think, 2010. So maybe you can quickly give us an outlook about what we're going to see tomorrow.
Sure. But first of all, really thank you. I feel I can't express how I feel super honored that Fruitful could be streamed within the context of the Academy. I'm really, really delighted for this opportunity. Thank you very much. And Fruitful is a two-part show. Actually, it's part of a trilogy, which is kind of like our big our company's big response to the situation that happened. So actually, the origin of the show in 2010 was that we were rehearsing for something, but then there was a blackout because there was a crackdown on the protesters, and a lot of people were killed. And up to this day, the government who ordered this killing is still not found guilty, or proper investigation has not been made. And so that was a really shocking moment in our contemporary political history. And so whatever we rehearsing, we changed, we turned it around, and we created the first part of the show, which was called Fluo Lessons. It's quite raw. You will see in the show that it's a very kind of flashy, very kind of spontaneous, impulsive responses that we had to the political turmoil that was happening in 2010, and then it grew into the second part, Full All Right, in 2011, and that's when we presented both sections together. And so the second part is a little bit more contemplative, going back to the history of violence, trying to make sense of the current political situation that we had in Thailand, looking back into the history. But also in the 2020 edition, it's quite important in the sense that in 2020, it was when we have this rising of the youth movement who came out and made these bold statements about wanting to reform the monarchy, the royal families and its institution, which is something that has been totally hidden and a taboo in our country. So this is another major burst of political expression in Thailand. And Fluful 2020 edition is, I think, it's a record and also a celebration of this movement too, although the current situation is now, developing in a sadder way than 2020. But at that moment when the show took place in December 2020, we really wanted to celebrate this movement of the people and by tracing back 10 years to where it all kind of started. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for giving us already now this introduction. It's really, I'm very much looking forward to see this together with all of you. And we have Sasapin with us tomorrow again after the performance for Q&A. And now I would like to introduce you to Irem. She's part of the invisible audience right now. And Irem Kurt is a designer and illustrator based in Berlin. And she's accompanying us. She was with us today, and she will be there today, the whole day tomorrow. And she's drawing to each session of this event an illustration, like it's an online graphic recording, but she's really more like an illustrator. And I'm very, very happy to have her with us. And I can't really wait to see what she has done right now, because we will see now, before saying goodbye to all of you, what she has done. Yes, the image will be shown right after the stream. So goodbye, all of you. Thank you for following us and listening to this conversation. And we would be very delighted to see you, the audience, to meet all of you now in Gatherton. We all will go there, and we build ourselves some little avatars, and then we can meet, and we can even enter the digital Geschäftsstelle, the ITI in Bethanien there. So it's like a little video game. And yes, and there is a cinema room, and in that cinema room, we're going to show the Fassbinder documentary about Theater der Welt 1982, Theater in Trance. So you can grab yourself a drink and meet us there. Thank you.